Well, welcome to our Leadership Institute, friends. This welcome is for all of us who have gathered this evening for the video conference, as well as all of our friends who will be listening on YouTube and viewing the slides in whatever nation you might be. So we welcome you worldwide. We have a rich class planned with Brockie Follette, our teacher, and she's speaking on the topic of building families, with a focus tonight on the CLIM Academy, which she'll tell you all about, and ministry to youth in the family. As we begin, let's give thanks to God. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for our friends here this evening, for our friends in the Institute who will be sharing this class as they view the video recording. May all of us grow in our knowledge of you. May we equip ourselves more fully for the future ministry to which you call us. We thank you for Brockie, who has come to teach us. We ask you to guide her teaching and our listening, and may Christ, our supreme teacher and Lord, be praised. To you be glory forever. Amen. Brockie Follette, I've known her as Brockie Harvey long before I knew her as Brockie Follette, will teach our Institute class, and she's made special arrangements tonight because she is counseling at our camp called Quaker Haven in southern part of Kansas. And she has a little girl who is a camper down there. So we thank you especially, Brockie, for taking your time as a camp counselor to teach us tonight. She's chaplain at Berkeley College. She teaches at Berkeley College. She is the director of the CLIM Academy, National Friends Youth Training, and she guides adults and youth and young adults in ministry. She formerly served as a youth pastor in Mid-America Yearly Meeting. She served in Iowa Yearly Meeting on the Youth and Young Adult Friends Boards. And before she joined the faculty here, she was on the Berkeley College Board of Trustees. She relates beautifully to all ages of friends, and all you have to do is observe her in her work at Haviland Friends Church with her husband, Todd, who is pastor there. And she also ministers with him to adults, youth, families, couples, singles. She's a gifted speaker and teacher. She'll teach us from the abundance of her experiences and knowledge and resources. So we thank you, Brockie, for coming to be with us tonight. I will turn the controls over to you until you're ready for the video, and then I'll take them back again.
Well, hello. It's good to be with you all this evening. And I just want to report that the forecast when I left for camp said that we were going to have 5 days of rain, and it hasn't rained but once. So we're thankful for that when you have 130 third, fourth, and fifth, sixth graders. So
how many?
About 130.
Wow, and you're in charge of all of them?
No, I'm just a counselor.
Oh, okay.
I'm in charge of 11.
Okay. I'm going to mute my mic and let you take over, Brockie, and I may disappear from the scene because I'm trying to help others get connected. Can you hear me? Uh-oh, we just lost Brockie. Where are you, Brockie?
I'm right here.
You disappeared,
Everybody disappeared off of my screen.
and your video's not back on yet. You may want to go down to there you go. Now you're on.
Dave, I'm looking for the controls for the PowerPoint. I don't know if you've given me that back yet.
But let's see if it came back to me. It says you're in control. Go over to the left. Do you see the PowerPoint up on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, go.
Oh, I see.
Go
Now I
to the
see.
left of it. You see a 01.
Okay. I got
Now
it.
click the down arrow to go to 02.
Yep.
Okay, we got it. Now I'm going to mute my mic.
Okay. Well, I decided this evening that I wanted to focus on a specific age group within family. And the age group that I want to specifically focus on this evening is 18 through 29-year-olds. We would formally, some of the research we're going to look at tonight would be those that we would call millennials. But now I think they're the generation behind, they're like Generation Z. But that's the group that I want to talk specifically about tonight. And I want to talk specifically about how is the church responding to this age group. What are we doing to help reach them? What are we doing to engage them? How are we responding to the fact that some of them are very different in the way they approach Christianity than maybe the way that we were raised? And so just for those of you who don't know, I'm the director for a program called Kaleo Academy at Brockie College, and we received a grant from the Lilly Endowment family to start a high school theological program. But specifically what we do is we're trying to train future leaders for the Fringe Church. We're beginning to train high schoolers in a way of friends, but also teaching them how to look towards the future with their lives and what they might do with their lives. So you're seeing a picture right now. This was the first summer that we gathered on the campus. And in this picture, you'll notice that there's not just students, but there's also adults. And so each of our high school students comes to the camp with an adult from their local church, and they walk through the week with them while they're at camp, but they also walk with them for another 10 months afterwards. And I just want to show you, because I like this so much, that in this picture is represented not only students from the United States, but we had a student from Bangladesh and Nepal. And so we're trying to be international in what we're doing as well. So why am I talking about this specific area is going to be linked back to the Fuller Youth Institute, which is from Fuller Seminary in California. The reason why that we started connecting and learning about this young adult group and what's going on with them, when we send our students home from this theology camp, we wanted to talk with churches about how do we help you learn how to receive your students or your young adults anytime they come home from a youth event. Because often what will happen is students will attend a camp or a conference or a yearly meeting and have a really deep experience of some kind with God, or feel like God is leading them in certain ways. But oftentimes when they return back home, we as the local church aren't doing anything to help that conversation move. And so we were looking for some kind of resource to help our churches learn how to receive their students when they come home. And that's where we've landed on the research that we're going to talk about tonight. It's called Growing Young, and this is research that came out from the Fuller Youth Institute. And you can see the subtitle is Help Young People Discover and Love Your Church. And I like to talk specifically sometimes when you're older and you might see this phrase, which I'm just reminding you all that I'm now over 50 and I'm no longer young. But I like to think of this title as saying how your church can be growing young while you're growing old. So we don't want to leave anybody out of the equation. We think that every generation in a church is very important. So I'm going to have you do a couple things. I know the Angleton group is usually in a group, and some of you might be together as a couple. I don't know if Jim and Candy are on here. I'm going to give you something just to think about, and if you have somebody in your group watching tonight, you could turn and visit with them about this. But I want to ask you, what does the future of your church look like? Just think about that for a minute. What does the future of your church look like? If you were to take 3 different snapshots, 3 different photographs, here's what I want to ask you to do. Take a snapshot, kind of a mental snapshot in your mind of your congregation right now, and then your congregation in the future, what you think it will be in 10 years, and when your congregation in 20 years. So just take a minute to do that. If you have a neighbor, you can talk to them or on your own, just to think about that. If you were going to take a mental snapshot, what does your congregation look like now, in 10 years, and in 20 years? And take about maybe a minute to do that. Maybe take about 30 more seconds. Okay, I'm wondering if there's any brave souls out there, if any of you would be willing to share. Maybe if I could just have 2 different groups or people share your thoughts on that. What's the mental snapshot of your church now, in 10 years, and in 20 years? So go. Candy, can you unmute? Oh. Do I have to do that?
Candy's speaker is, microphone is not working. Candy Clump's microphone is not working.
Okay. Do I have to unmute them, Dave?
Brockie, you ask hard questions.
Good. That means I'm a good teacher?
Oh, man, I don't know. Yes, you are. I do know. You are.
Just kidding.
Yeah, we barely got past the first one. We're like, what does our church look like now? So we didn't even get to the 20-year one. But it is an interesting conversation, really, to think about the kids in the children's church right now. And 10 years from now, they may be off at college, and 20 years from now, who knows? Will they come back with their kids and families? Will they? I don't know. I don't really have a very good answer other than that. I felt like it really is a great question that maybe we should ask ourselves more often.
Thank you. Anybody else brave? Dennis?
it's not that we're not brave, it's just we aren't sure how to answer that question yet.
There's no
I
right
agree
or wrong
with
answer.
I agree with Angleton. It was kind of hard to look at because I kept really getting a big image. I was looking individually at people that we have here now that I know will probably be gone in 10 years. But kind of with our church, our history, it's people have always left, but there's always been other people. And so then I got excited about the upcoming possibly new people. And so that's where my mind was.
Cool. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. So just imagine with me for a minute, if you could think about this. Imagine if your picture was infused with energy, passion, and dedication and excitement of young and old together. What if in your church, your future, you could not keep young people from pouring into the front of your doors of your church and never wanting to leave out the back door? What if young and old were worshiping together passionately, that together everyone was giving sacrificially, that they were engaging together relationally, not just with their own peers, but with generations mixing in? What if there was the stability and the wisdom of the older generation and the energy and excitement and innovation, or the questions of young people? So the research that we're going to talk about tonight from the Fuller Youth Institute is just to design and offer to you a message that your church's future can be as bright as your past. I want to say that again. Your church's future can be as bright as your past. It's not just wishful thinking. That's something that God can breathe into for all of us. And so this research that we're going to look at tonight, I want you to know it was studied with hundreds of congregations where this picture became the reality, that young and old were mixing together. And that really what this research found is that young people are not done with the church, capital C. And so just I'm going to take a side note here. Why would it be important for us to care about this topic? And I just want to share with you personally, for me, why this topic is important to me. The first reason is, for some of you who, I don't know if you've read my bio, but I've been in youth ministry really since I was probably 18 years old. When I came out of high school, I began working as a volunteer in the youth at Haviland Friends Church. And then after that, I became a youth pastor and did that for 11 years. And lo and behold, here I am at Camp Quaker Haven, coming out of retirement to counsel junior camp. And so anyhow, it's a personal issue for me because these are the students that I work with all the time. And I want them to feel connected to the church. I want them to love the church, capital C. I want them to understand the biblical view of the church and how that wasn't just something that was great historically, but it's actually something that's still great today. I want that when they go away, that they miss their church, that they miss the people in their church, that is part of the family that helps to raise them. And then also just the larger picture is, it's a question for me about leadership in the Friends Church for the future. And I may have mentioned this before, but both of my grandfathers were Friends pastors, and I've been a part of 3 different Friends churches on staff. And so I want there to be a future of leaders in the Friends Church. I don't want our denomination to not have people being trained up to be future leaders. And then for me, it's a legacy issue. I want my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids to be able to say that they love the church, and for them it's been a body that takes care of them. But the tension that we have to live in there is we don't do this because we live in fear. We're not afraid to say, oh, no, there's not going to be a church. I think that we do this because we genuinely are passionate about the fact that Jesus, for some reason, and God decided that God's megaphone to the world was the church. He didn't pick something else, but that's what he picked to be the megaphone to say, here's who God is we're the people that he picked. And so that's why I care so much about this topic. And so I just ask a couple of you again, if 2 people might be brave, Why would you care about this topic? Why would you care about this group of 18 to 29-year-olds or this group of young adults? Why would you care about this issue? I know Candy just wants to talk to me. I can sense it. I see you. If you could just sign language with me, it would be awesome. I could figure it out. Anyone? Well, Angleton, that's another hard question that you guys can tackle later on this evening if you want to as well. The first thing that we need to do as leaders is to define reality. Oh, I want to show you this picture. This is the church that Todd, my husband, was a pastor at for 17 years. And I specifically want to show you a couple of things in this picture. When I think about the church, when I think about a snapshot, a mental snapshot of a church, I love this picture, and I'm going to show you this row right here, why I love it so much. So this is Charlie, clear over here, Charlie Gregory, and she's probably in her 70s. And then you can see this group. These are all high school girls right here. And then this is my youngest daughter, and then this is one of her little friends 2 years younger than her. When I think of the church, this is the picture I love. That the idea that there are generations all the way from 70 down to 3 sitting in the same pew together doing fellowship together. And so if you would hear the backstory behind this picture is Charlie's visiting with all these gals, asking them how their week's been. And then my daughter here is actually reading a book to this 2-year-old here or 3-year-old here. And so that's the mental picture that I get when I think about the church and when I become passionate about what I want to see happen. So the first job of leaders is to define reality. So before we can go any further, we need to talk about how our churches are doing right now. So we're going to look at some of the research of our current national church climate. So what we're seeing in churches today is called the 1 and 2 drift. And what this means is 1 out of every 2 young people who grow up in the faith today end up drifting from God in the faith after they graduate from high school. 1 out of 2 young people, and here's the part to really notice, 1 out of 2 young people who grow up in the faith today. We're not just talking about young people or young adults who were never attached to the church. We're finding that 1 and 2 students who were in leadership at their churches, people who are highly engaged, are still drifting. There is a variation of what this looks like, but in general, in some ways, that's 50% if you think about it. And we probably need to get better at this as a church. Also, research tells us that religious nuns are on the rise. And what that means is nuns are people who would say they are religiously unaffiliated, atheistic, or agnostic. And according to Pew Research, so this first one is in 2007, so that would be 12 years ago, 16% of U.S. adults said they were nuns, that they didn't have any affiliation to God. But then you fast forward to 2014, and 23% of adults said that they were nuns, religious nuns. Now, specifically in that 23%, 34% of that 23% who were millennials. So just take that in for a second. That 2014 statistic of 23% of U.S. adults, millennials in that grouping, 34% of them said they were religious nuns. Next, here's some more reality. No major Christian tradition is growing in the U.S. today. The vast majority of denominations in the country are either stagnant or in some state of decline. Now, the only thing that I would like to add in here is I do find isn't out of date, but the question that we have to ask ourselves is the way in which we do ministry, is it out of date with this 18 through 29-year-olds? And I want to talk.
Can you repeat your last couple sentences, because you disappeared and everything went dead?
Can you tell me where you last heard me, Dave?
She was going to tell us the question at her comment.
What?
She was getting ready to take the question she had.
Yeah, you were getting ready to say your question you had, and then we lost you.
The question.
It was a question about the vast majority of denominations being stagnant or shrinking.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Oh, I said, I think that if you would do some research on the Latino Fringe Church, did you hear me say that? I think the Latino Fringe Church actually is probably growing in the Fringe denomination compared to the rest of us. That would be my one exception that I would write in there to that. So if we look at the American church as a whole, it seems to be that the church is aging and shrinking. It may feel like the church can feel like this, that it's largely collaborated for a world that no longer exists. And I want you to hear this part, because when I first read this, and especially being a person who's been involved in planning ministry for a long time, it can feel a little offensive, but I think if you can get the gist of it here, it says the message isn't out of date, but I think this is the question we have to ask. Is it the way in which we do ministry, is it out of date? Are we still collaborated for the year 1985? Do our church services all still operate the same way they did when I was 18? Is this true? Is this not true? It's something that I think that it sort of creates a tension, but I do think it's a question that we have to ask. It's not a question about are we relevant to society as much as just is what we're doing, especially with this age group, is it relevant to the world they're living in? Is it real to the world they're living in? Are they able to come to church and feel like they can ask the hard questions, even if they're uncomfortable for us, and we don't throw them out because we understand that's a part of their faith building? So after you hear those statistics, in some ways, I think it can feel like a lot of bad news. But what if we were to take seriously, and I think we know this, that God hasn't turned his back on the church in America? What if there were churches in America who are doing amazing work with this age group? What if we're not in the midst of decline with this age group, but we're actually in some sort of renewal? What if what's happening is actually a place of hope? What if we had opportunity to participate with God in something else that he might be doing? What might we learn? So this growing young, which I want to show you, the definition of growing young, and this is the research from Fuller Youth Institute, is growing young is churches that aren't shrinking and aging, but they are growing in involving and retaining young people ages 15 through 29, which actually ends up bringing overall vitality to the whole church. So here's how the research went. And this research was done in, sorry about that. This research was, the book was published in 2015. So you'd have to think at this point that this research is over 5 years old. So the Fuller Youth Institute studied churches that were doing great. They were doing great at growing young while growing old. These churches have a high percentage of young people, and those young people are contributing to the over vitality of the church. And this is how the research went. There was 3 different stages. Stage number one, they interviewed 259 churches online, and they did surveys with pastors and youth leaders. And then the second phase of the research was they interviewed 41 churches, and they did 535 phone interviews with people from those churches. A good clue was when they talked to an 18-year-old and an 81-year-old, they were saying the same things about the church. That was something that they could tell that there was vitality in the church. And the third phase that they went to was they actually took 12 churches from these 259 they started with, and they did church visits all over the country with them. So there was a total of 1,300 interviews, 10,000 hours of research time, 10,000 pages of interview transcripts. But the diversity of the project is, and there's probably a church that resembles you. Half of the churches were predominantly non-white, and there were churches from every region of the country. Churches under 100 and churches over 10,000. Churches from over 20 different denominations. Doing ministry with young people, what they found contributes to the vitality of the entire church. The key link is that when churches do ministry with young people, it's not just a drain on the overall church. It's not just a decision about we're going to be traditional or we're going to try and reach younger folks. Instead, when you engage young people in strategic ways, it can be good for the overall congregation. I'm going to stop for a second on this and just think with me here. And I know I mentioned this before, that we live in a kind of an interesting family where I have a son who's 30, one who's 28, a daughter who's 22, and then we have a 9-year-old. So our lives are still very highly engaged in youth and young adult culture. But you might be in a place in your life where your grandkids are older or you're not around that. But I think if you've ever been in a phase of your life where you're around young people or you're around your grandchildren or your children, there is a certain vitality that comes with that. There's such a freshness to them often. For those who are hungering after the faith especially, they're not afraid to try things. I mean, I love being here at camp and watching these 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 6th graders worship at night. And it's very real. It's not something that's just a fake thing, but they are worshiping God from their hearts. And when I'm here, there's a certain vitality that comes to me just because they're youth. You know, it's a part of what happens. And so that's what's happening in these churches. It's sort of like it's contagious, that their love for God is rubbing off on other people. So here's something just to think about, and you can turn to your neighbor, or you can just think about this in your own head. What do you think it takes to reach this age group, 15 to 29, in today's society? What do you think in our churches it takes to reach this age group of 15 through 29 in our churches? So take about a minute, minute and a half. Angleton, you might need 5 minutes, I'm not sure. But go ahead and take some time to talk about that. Let's take about a minute and a half to do that. Maybe about 20 more seconds. Okay, before I answer that question, I want to tell you a story. Some people might say, what does it take to reach this age group? And one of your responses might have been, we need a young, hip youth leader. So this is the story of Bill Wallace, and it's from Emmanuel Nazarene. In the research, this church was visited, Emmanuel Nazarene Church in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. They were talking to a group of 20-somethings who told them why they loved their church. One talked about the worship, another talked about mission trips, and when someone talked about Bill Wallace, the energy in the room grew. They talked about how Bill met them in the church hallway and asked how their day was going. He would show up to their basketball games or their dance recitals, and the Fuller people thought he must have been the 20-year-old youth pastor, but he was 70 years old and was known for investing in the lives of young people. So, this is Bill Wallace, if you want to know who he is. So here's what you need to know from the research of Fuller Youth Institute. Qualities your church doesn't need to grow young. There's not a particular size. This age group of 15 to 29, they're not looking for a certain size of a church. They're not looking for a smaller church. They're not looking for a mega church. Young people are looking for something beyond just a mega church entertainment experience. Qualities your church doesn't need to grow young. It's not a specific location or region. Being located in the Bible Belt is neither a right or a wrong location. I don't think that young people won't think it's cool not to go to church here. We have examples from the Fuller Youth Institute of churches in rural America who are doing well with young people. Also, your church age. You don't have to be a new church plant to attract this age group. There's examples of churches well over 150 years old who are doing a good job. And there's not a specific denomination. There's no magic denomination to join and so that young people will start pouring through doors. Also, being part of a denomination or having it in your church's name is not a kiss of death. Young people are not looking to avoid a certain denomination. So I want to tell you about a specific church. I've actually had an opportunity to drive by this. This is St. John the Evangelist, located in downtown Indianapolis. It was founded in 1871. In the 1960s and 70s, this church was once around 1,000 people. But the attendance declined well below 100 as people moved out of the suburbs. In the 1990s, the church faced the reality of growing old while not growing young and talked about closing their doors. But there was a group who said, we're going to pray, and we don't believe that God is calling us to shut our doors. And so in fact, when they prayed, and what they felt came out of that is, we believe God is calling us to re-engage our community and our neighborhood. So they are located downtown right next to the IUPUI campus. So it's Indiana University and Purdue University together. If you live there, you call it Ooey Pooey. I always like that. But anyhow, they prayed about what it might look like to reach out to that community. They had a 10 to 15-year recovery period. In other words, they began to dream about what God had for them, this new thing, but it took 10 to 15 years to actually implement that into action. Now they are a congregation of about 1,500, 1,000 of which are college students and young adults. They were even nominated by the Roman Catholic Church as one of the most vibrant parishes in the entire country. The method did not involve hype. There was no laser light shows, smoke machines, or skinny jeans. It was about community. That's what it was about. So as they did these interviews with these churches, what they came up with was 6 common core commitments to these churches that they started off with all these interviews, and they came down to this 12 churches. There were 6 things that they had in common. So that's what we're going to talk about. Hello?
Hello? Take one.
So they have these 6 core. Dave, is there someone trying to get on? So there's 6 core commitments, and these help summarize what motivates and drives the congregation. So the 6 ones, and I'm going to talk about this one.
Hey, everybody, make sure you're muted. We don't get all that feedback.
So the first core commitment is unlocking key chain leadership. This is the wheel. We're going to look at this several times. But the first core commitment is unlocking key chain leadership. So the story that they give in the book is a young man named Link. And Link just finishes his driver's ed test. And he passes. And so the first place that Link goes after passing his test is he goes to see his youth pastor to show him that he passed his test. And of course, he's driving his car, so he gets his first pair of keys to his car. Well, when he shows up, his youth pastor is in the middle of a project, and he says, "Hey, I'm trying to load the pop machine. Can you come help me do that?" And so Link helped him load the pop machine, and he would come by maybe a couple days after school to help the youth pastor do that. And the youth pastor said, "Hey, you're really good at helping me with this. How would you like this to be your job?" So now Link not only has his keys to his car, but his second key is now he has a key to the pop machine, and he's been given a responsibility at the church. Well, because he keeps stopping by after school, he notices that there's an after-school program ministry happening there, and that they notice that Link is really good when these kids come of playing with them and hanging out with them. And so they said, "Hey, would you like to do this while you're loading the pop machine? Could you come spend time? And by the way, this is the classroom that they're in, and when you help us at night, this is the closet with all the activity stuff we're going to have you lock in." So he gets a third key on his chain of leadership to help out with this ministry. So that's what we're talking about, is this idea of locking key chain leadership when people are young. Don't assume the things that we did. I actually did when I was in my master's program. I did it with students from Friends University, Malone College, Barclay College, and where were my other one? George Fox. And so I did an interview with students on those who were in ministry or doing a major related to a ministry, or they were doing that bivocationally. What were the experiences for them? What were the things for them that made them want to pursue vocation in ministry as a calling? And almost every one of them said, "When I was a young person, my church gave me responsibilities." And they said that was a major part, even though they didn't always get it right. And there were times they failed, but they said that because their church gave them opportunities when they were young to serve, that's what really kept them wanting to keep engaging in this vocational ministry. So I'm going to give you an example. I want to talk about scripture on this one. So I was thinking about how I get a little nervous when I think about some of the high schoolers at my own church and giving them responsibilities. They can't even text or email me back. And so I'm like, why on earth would I give them a responsibility? And then I was thinking about, too, sometimes I think we're afraid because we think they're very immature in their faith. And so we're worried that if they stumble, it's going to make other people stumble. But I was reminded as I was looking in Scripture about Jesus, and when he, very soon in his ministry, released not only the 12 disciples, but the 70. And if you look at that, it's always funny to me, the scriptures in between. This is why while he's still having conversations with the disciples and saying to them, "Are you still so dull?" But yet he's sending them out, that he knows that the only way for them to really understand what it means to be in ministry with him is to give them opportunities. I think about other scriptures where, like, the disciples tried to cast out the spirits and they were unable to do that. But Jesus didn't so much come to them and saying, he taught them this is why it didn't work. And so I just love thinking about scripture in relation to all of that. Also, and Dave, I think this is a good place, maybe, or do we go to 8 or do we go to 10 till 8? I can't remember.
It's entirely up to you when you're ready to take a break.
Okay, we're going to do this next section, and then I'll have you play the video, and then we'll take our break, okay?
Sure. Do you want me to play the video now or in just a minute?
Not quite yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm here.
Okay. So one of the things that we've had to learn about working with this age group is the idea of empathizing with young people today. It's about perspective taking. And that's what I would say again, is don't assume young people are experiencing things the way that we did. I heard recently in a workshop, someone said, well, don't you think that kids nowadays have it harder than generations before? But the comment of the presenter was, well, you know, my kids sure weren't in a Vietnam War or a Korean War or World War I. And so they're saying maybe that it's not harder, it's just really different and more complex. They live in a much more complex world than we do. So anyhow, there's this church. There's driving, sorry. So there's a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's the First United Methodist Church. And it actually has a very unique architectural piece. They have a building with 2 glass sides facing downtown Tulsa. And there was a canvas wall facing one of those sides. They thought this wall has to be understood. Whoever looks at that wall needs to think this church cares about young adults. But writing, hey Tulsa, we care about young adults on the wall didn't seem like a great idea. So they wrote the 3 most loving words instead that you can ask this young adult range group. And the 3 most important words you can learn from me tonight are, tell me more. Let me just say that again. It's tell me more. That's what they wrote on the sign of the church. Oh, let me try one more. You can see the sign here. It says, tell me more. And so I want you to watch this video, Dave, that talks about empathy and what it means to actually have empathy.
Are you ready for the video?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get the control back.
So what is empathy and why is it very different from empathy? Empathy fuels connection, sympathy drives connection. Empathy is very interesting. It's Lisa Wiseman, the nursing scholar, because she studies profession, very diverse profession for empathy as well. And she has the 4 qualities of empathy: perspective taking, the ability to take perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth, taking out of judgment, not easy, and just most of us do. Recognizing emotions in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And then I would think of empathy as this kind of sacred space that someone kind of a deep hole, and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then they look and they say, hey, I'm down, I know what's up down here. And you know woo! It's bad. Very much. I have to connect in myself that knows that feeling. Where know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to put a line there. I don't think that's appropriate. I'm using it as well. We're trying to put this whole line on the ground. So I have miscarriage. I think marriage is on the part. At least we have marriage. John, thank you.
Hey, Dave. I don't know if that showed up on anyone's screen. I don't know if anyone's
If I share something with you, I would say,
Dave, this is Merle Filter. Your video is not coming through.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Okay, all right, let me try something else. I'm sorry. Well. All right, I wish you had told me earlier.
While Dave's finding it, just reminding you, this is the second core commitment, is empathizing. Well, maybe this is a good time to take a break, Dave, and then you and I can figure this out.
All right, we'll do that.
Okay.
We'll take a break.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Dave, it's Drew. Can you hear me?
Drew, this is Merle Kinser, and I can hear you fine.
Okay, cool. I think Dave's working on getting that video planned, so I'll wait for him to get finished with that. Thank you, Merle.
Drew?
Yes, sir.
My microphone, everything disappeared. So I'm still trying to get that video so you can see it. And I'm going to try it again.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be watching. If you want to give it a shot, I'll tell you if I see it.
I'm going to share. Then I'm sharing content. Then I'm sharing Windows Explorer because I have that on Windows Explorer. And then I have now it shows on mine, but it doesn't show on yours, does it?
No, how big is the file? Do you know?
So we studied profession, very diverse profession for empathy and development, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking.
Okay, no, I'm not seeing it.
All right.
I can try from my end one more time, Dave.
Tell me, Drew, what I can do.
Brockie, you said you could try to play on your end.
Yeah. Is it share web browser?
No, if you share the web browser, then you have to use that link. I had it working perfectly where I shared content and I had it already on my screen. I just minimized out of it. Tell me what you want me to do, Drew.
Yeah, the only other way is to share web browser thing, but that I think that will override the slideshow.
Well, I think in your notes, it actually gives the link to it if you wanted to watch it on your own after the Institute.
Well, that's not going to work.
They don't have that in their notes, the PowerPoint. Is that in your PowerPoint notes?
So, Drew, if I send the link to you, can you get it up on WebEx and give you the control?
I have the link. I could try, but when I go to share, it says that I'll take over, basically.
Well, I haven't given you the control. Do you have the link?
I do.
You have the link to the video?
Yeah. That.
You've got the control too.
Okay. Hold on. Which screen are you seeing? 1 second. Is this what are you seeing now?
Nothing.
There it is.
Yeah, I got it now.
Perfect.
Okay, everybody fix that.
Okay, Drew, what'd you do? Tell me.
So I did do share web browser, but then it was weird. I had to pick the right one, and I'm not actually sure where I ended up. But if y'all are seeing it, then I'm happy.
But I'm not happy if I don't know how to do it in the future.
Yeah. I just did share web browser, and then I just kept clicking through tabs until you guys said you saw it. Hold on. No, never mind. I think I can put, just to get through tonight, I can play, but I think we got to make sure everybody's muted, otherwise it'll be kind of garbled for everyone.
Okay.
But I don't know, has it been 10 minutes? Are we ready for that yet?
Yeah, we are. We're ready for it. So I'll mute my mic. You've got the controls. You just take over and everybody can listen.
Okay. Jump in and tell me if you don't see or hear it.
Okay.
Here we go.
No sound. Have no sound, Drew. Hey, Drew, we're not hearing anything. He's not hearing me. Is everybody saying that? Hey, Drew, we are not hearing. Drew, we have not heard a thing.
Are you hearing it?
Yes, but we can't hear the video.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was working. Okay, well, it's over now. I don't know. We may just need to send the link out to let people watch it.
You want to try it one more time and see if you can get the audio to work?
Okay, bear with me for just a second here.
Empathy.
Do you hear that?
Connection.
No. No sound. No sound.
Okay. I don't know what it's doing. Yeah, your idea to download the video and then share that is probably the best way to do it. I just don't know why it's not working. Yeah, I guess the way I'm sharing my web browser, it's just sharing the video, but it's not actually sharing the audio.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work.
So we'll move on without it. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so. If we do have a YouTube link in that document that Brockie sent, so we can watch it
Okay.
on
All
our
right.
own. Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
sure.
So Brockie.
Yep.
So
Okay.
we'll need to get the controls back to Brockie.
Okay. Thanks for trying that, Drew. Thanks for being patient. I would suggest you to watch that video when you have a chance. I do think it really is a great way to understand the difference between sympathy and empathy. But it also talks about, there's a phrase in there called perspective taking, like learning how to take the perspective of someone else. I'll give you a couple examples of this. You have to remember the culture that I work with on a regular basis. I work with college students at Berkeley College, and they like to be on Twitter and Facebook. And oftentimes I found myself early on, and maybe it's because the way I was raised, being very frustrated with the posts they would make or the tweets that they would make. That I would often think that they were inappropriate, or not in a way that was, well, I'm not sure exactly how to explain that, but there was times that I just think, oh, I wouldn't post that. That's not who I am. I don't think I would say something about that. I'm not sure I want everybody to know everything that's going on in my mind and my thoughts. But I began to read this Tell Me More, and I suddenly realized that if I wanted to really understand this group of students that I'm working with, I needed to learn how to have conversations with them about what they were posting. And so when I would often see a post from one of them, and I think one of them was a tweet that said that they were angry at the church and they hadn't attended for 2 years. And the irony of that to me was it was a student that I was meeting with on a regular basis, and I didn't even know that was going on. And so as I called them to come to my office and just said, hey, I'd love to have a cup of coffee with you. I'd love you to tell me more about this tweet that you made about how you feel about the church. Well, what happened from that moment on became this relationship to a student that was over a year and a half, was a student coming to my office almost weekly to talk about faith and their process of faith. And I had to really push myself to do that. And I would say that many times I didn't agree with this student, but oftentimes I would sit and listen to their process of faith. And then I had empathy for the things that they were going through. And so, long story short, this student graduated this past year, and I received a 2-page handwritten note from them. And in the note, it said, thank you for teaching me about taking perspective. And so I wanted to kind of briefly pause here that all these 6 core commitments, even though we're talking about them, churches growing young while they're growing old, I don't just teach these to people who are older in the churches. I try to teach these 6 core commitments to the youth as well. And so I'm often asking them, how are you empathizing with the older generations in your church? When maybe someone gets frustrated about hymns, I say, you should go talk to your grandma and ask her, how's her hearing? Is it hard for her to learn a new song every Sunday because she can't hear? Have you ever thought about the fact that the songs that she grew up with in her lifetime are no longer being played in the church, and she doesn't understand the new songs and she can't sing along? And for her to sing along is what helps her to worship. And so that's a big part of the 6 core commitments, is learning to empathize with young people. But like I said, I really think it changes your whole church culture if you can teach everyone what does it mean to empathize with someone. And remember, those 3 most important words are, tell me more. Those are the 3 most important words. And just as you think about scripturally about what does it mean to empathize, I'm reminded of Jesus as he wept over Jerusalem, and that he looked over it. And to me, that is one of the strongest pictures of what it meant for him to empathize, that he wept about what he already saw going on there. Even though he was frustrated with the people, he took time to sit with that and to grieve what was actually going on there. The next core commitment is taking Jesus' message seriously. I think I said to you before that I run this high school theological program, and in the original grant that was given, there was a writer of a book who was kind of showing us how to do these programs, and her name is Kenda Creasy Dean. She's actually at Princeton University, and as she was talking and gathering these students to talk about building this high school program at Princeton, one of the high school students said to her, please tell me you're not going to give us the Fisher-Price version of theology. And the student was saying to her that's what she felt like was happening most of the time in youth ministry. And that students, what's attracted to them about a church is a church that takes Jesus' message seriously. They don't water it down. And there's two myths about this. I just want to add this to you. One is that we somehow think that to reach this age group, that watered down teaching and hyper entertaining program is what will draw them in. We do not need to whitewash teachings of Scripture. Growing young churches talked about Jesus and the cost of following him plenty. A hyper entertaining ministry program. We spent a lot of time trying to compete with entertainment young people can find elsewhere. Growing young churches found other ways to connect with their young people than just hyper entertaining programs. And just, I'll give you another example of this because it just works with where I live. But on Monday, the first day of our theology camp at Kaleo Academy, our first day is on biblical interpretation. And both years that we've taught this class, so the students have a class in the morning and in the afternoon they have a lab, but they have someone teaching them about all the different genres of Scripture. They're talking to them about what does it mean to have the audience that you're writing to and who's receiving it. They learn all these terms that they've never probably heard before. And then actually one of our teachers taught our students how to do inductive Bible study, and after study where they're comparing an Old with the New Testament passage. And these are high school students. And I will just tell you that after we got done with that exercise last year in the afternoon and we listened to the way that they unpacked Scripture and the things that they learned, I just sat and wept. Realized how their souls were for the meat of the Scriptures. Growing are looking a church that takes Jesus' message seriously. The next core commitment is fueling a warm community. Fueling a warm community. And so just remember it this way. Warm is the new cool. That sounds kind of funny, but that's what's going on. We find that in culture today, we used to say that youth just needed like one good adult figure in their life to help them get through this faith process. But what we're actually finding today is for one youth, this 15 to 29-year-olds, to make it through the faith process actually needs 5 consistent adults in their lives. And we're not just talking about their parents, but they need 5 consistent adults in their lives. And you got to remember this research is based upon 2015, so that might have even changed. I recently attended, I like to tell stories about the Friends Church. Maybe a year ago, I attended Denver First Friends Church. And I know a few people there, but I don't know a lot. And I actually was with a group of people, but I was standing at the back by the sound booth. And I'm telling you, while I was standing back there, I had at least 6 people come up to me, introduce themselves, say hello to me, shook my hand, asked me my name, why I was there. And I remember thinking, I would come to this church just because of how warm and friendly they were. And so that's just something to think about, that's actually attractive to this 15 to 29-year-olds. Now, I have had a few of them tell me that sometimes they feel like when they come to church, they're like fresh meat, especially if it's a church that doesn't have a lot of youth and young adults. And you have to remember, too, that they're in this age of using their phones. And so just remember, even a smile at someone, I think I heard someone say this week, that you can smile with people with your eyes and make them feel welcome. And I often, the way I teach this in reverse to my high school and college students, is maybe they'll tell me, no one talks to me when I go to church. And I go, do you ever go try to find one person to talk to each week? You pick one person that you want to be warm and friendly to, and you try to build a relationship with them. And I like this quote. It says, young people aren't looking for a hipper Christianity. We're looking for a truer Christianity, a more authentic Christianity. No coffee shops or fog machines required. It's a great quote. So the next core, and just to attach scripture to that, I think this is a very easy one to attach to, is that Jesus always created this warm community where he went, that he was very approachable. I especially think of him with the children. Let the children come unto me, for such as the kingdom of heaven. I think the only people there wasn't a warm community with sometimes for him was the Pharisees and the Sadducees. But we found that that's who Jesus consistently was a person who felt warm community. Now this next one, if you look on the wheel that's in your handout, you'll notice that there's an arrow pointing to the left on the wheel. This is the one, they talk about this wheel and how you don't have to do any of these in the order that they're in, but if you don't have this one in your wheel, then some of these things might not ever take place. But I need to explain to you what prioritizing young people everywhere in your church means. It means having a plan for this age group. It means saying that we're not just sitting by going, oh, they're not coming, oh, they're not interacting, or oh, I'm frustrated with them, but instead being proactive to say, what are we going to do? What kind of plan do we have to reach out to this 15 to 29-year-olds? This can be the most dangerous spot where churches tend to keep growing old without growing young. Several of these core commitments can be intention or things different people in your church already practice, but until we really get this from top to bottom, we won't know it's actually happening. So I'm going to give you an example of this, a couple of ones. One of them is from a local Friends church. So at our Kaleo Academy, the idea of that is that we try to get churches to help send the student and the mentor. One of the churches recently that we just partnered with, their student is paying a third of the way, the youth budget is paying a third of the way, and then the student is working with the church to help pay off another third of that. But also another church that's partnered with us before, they decided instead of just putting whatever they were going to put in the budget towards the student going to Kaleo Academy into the youth budget, they actually moved it over under a different budget line, which was leadership. Because they were saying, we don't want to just say this is about youth ministry. We want to say that the money that we're going to spend on this to send a student to have leadership training is about our whole church. It's not just about youth ministry. Some people might say that this is spoiling them. And I rather think of it this way. We're trying to give scaffolding. A Reformed church in the Midwest realized that when young people in their church needed most was mentors, especially the young men. The young women had female mentors, but the young men of the church weren't being mentored well by older men of the church. So this church decided to invest their funds in someone to work with, not in someone to work with young people, but to hire a new men's minister who would focus on mentoring the men of the church with the goal that these men would then turn around and mentor the young men in the church. So think about that shift. Maybe they thought the solution was, oh, we need a youth pastor, but instead they said, no, we need to help our older generation understand how to walk alongside the younger generation. And the last core commitment is being the best neighbor. So this would be the challenge to think about your own church. If you were to take a photograph of your church and the people inside and the way that your church looks on the inside and outside, does that photograph match your neighborhood? The people in your neighborhood and the housing, all those things outside your church. So in essence, young people are looking for churches that aren't just in their neighborhoods taking up space. They're looking for churches that are actually being good neighbors to their neighbors. When we were at our conference getting training on this growing young, I thought it was very interesting that an African American pastor stood up and said, my church is in a dominantly white neighborhood, but I have not one single white person in my church. And he was very challenged by that I need to be a good neighbor to the church, to my neighborhood around me. And we need to be thinking as a congregation, as an African American congregation, how can we bridge the gap to a white Anglo community? this idea of being the best neighbor means we have to listen to our neighbors. It's an intersection between needs of the neighborhood and the skills and vision of the church. So just this past spring break, I was in Houston with our youth group, and we did some inner city ministry. And I wish I could remember off the top of my head this place downtown. But actually, it's a parking garage in the middle of Houston, downtown, and the whole bottom floor is just ministry for homeless. So on the bottom floor, they have a laundry service, they have a shower service, they have social needs services, and they serve a meal every day for lunch. And so as I was visiting with a woman who was there, she was telling me about her church is across the road. And as they were thinking about, we need to build a parking lot because there's not enough space for our people to get to church, someone in the congregation said, I don't want to build a parking lot unless we make the bottom floor for ministry, because what kind of neighbors would we be to our community? And so that was how they were creative in deciding to be good neighbors in their own neighborhood. So just to kind of wrap up on growing young, growing young isn't about changing youth ministry, it's about changing church culture. Let me say that again. Growing young isn't about changing youth ministry, it's about changing church culture. That's kind of a hard thing to swallow. If we're going to fix this not being able to have 15 and 29-year-olds come back to the church, it's not just a new pizza night or a new service. It takes a culture change, which takes time, and we don't always have an A plus B equals C formula. One thing to keep in mind, people don't resist change, they resist loss. Let me say that again. People don't resist change, they resist loss. I'll give you a story to help understand that. A church on a Sunday morning, they used to have the brown paneling in the back of the church, and the trustees decided that they thought that needed to be painted. I think it was built in the 70s, and it was maybe about 10 years ago, and they thought, we just want to have it brighter up front. So they painted it, I think it was a beige. Well, that following Sunday morning, after it was painted, one of the women from the church, who was probably retired age, was sitting in the back just crying and weeping. And I sat in the back trying to figure out what was going on. And I knew she was having a hard time. She was very upset that the paneling had been painted, very upset about it. And I watched person after person go sit with her. Well, what I found out was her father had passed away and might have been a bit of a hard man, but he had helped build that church. And for her, it was about the loss of her father that was making her be upset about the change. So just remember that. People don't resist change, they resist loss. So just something to wrap up with on these 6 core commitments. It's very important to know this. All of these 6 core commitments are Jesus-centered. We didn't say that because we just want to assume that everybody knows that they're all Jesus-centered. Jesus isn't one of the core commitments, but he's at the center of everything that churches do. No matter where the Fuller Youth Institute went, these core commitments were in action, but they look different in each church's specific context. They saw different expressions of these commitments depending on the context of the church, but the core commitment of Jesus Christ was the same. The order of the diagram is not important. It is only what they observed and is most common that had implications for all the ministry of the church. And I'm just going to show you that this is the growing young wheel again one more time just so you see that. And then finally, I want to end with this quote, and this may seem like a sharp quote, but I want you to understand the reason why we're having this conversation really ultimately is because we care about the faith of our young people. We care about the fact that we believe that the best thing for them in life is to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so I want to leave you with this quote. It's a little harsh, but it says, I can't read that very well. Give me a second. says that sinners be damned, at least let them leap to hell over our dead bodies. And if they perish, let them perish with our arms wrapped around their knees. If hell must be filled, let it be filled in the teeth of our exertions, and let no one go unwarned or unprayed for. And just to let you know, that's by Charles Spurgeon. I didn't come up with that on my own. But that's the reason why we care about this topic in the end, is because we want young people, youth and young adults, to come to know Jesus Christ. And that's really what this conversation is all about. I don't want it to be said about myself or my church that we didn't do anything to try to reach this generation. I want to say that we were a generation that worked hard to understand a younger generation than us that might be really, really different from us. So that's all I got, Dave. I don't know if you want to do some questions and answers.
Brockie, your emphasis on culture speaks to this group because we represent numerous cultures around the world. And I would like to hear from some of the people who are online right now about what youth ministry means in your culture. We have refugees from several African nations with us tonight. Well, we have Kumar and Ernest and Zire and Diudine, and then from Jamaica we have Mary Carter Haynes. We have several cultures represented here. Mary Carter, maybe this would be a good place to ask you, what is important in your ministry to youth there on the Jamaican island? Can you unmute your mic and talk to us about that? I'll unmute it for you. You go ahead and speak.
Repeat this for me.
Mary Carter Haynes.
I'm trying.
You're unmuted. We can hear you. Now you're muted again.
Repeat the question for me.
You just don't worry about the muting. I have unmuted you. The question is.
Okay. Yes.
The question I'm asking is, in your culture in Jamaica,
yes,
what is important for you to minister to the youth? It would be different than it would be in Los Angeles, California, or Abilene, Kansas.
I may not be able to speak for differences because it might be the same thing, but it's to be able to keep them within the church and to bring the message of Jesus and his kingdom to them in a way that will keep them in the church. Because you'll find that they gravitate to things more outside of the church, and how we present Christ to them becomes monotonous and boring.
Okay, tell us a little bit more what you're doing in your ministry with youth. What does that look like?
Repeat that for me. Sort of blurred a while ago.
This is your question, Mary Carter Haynes.
Yes, I'm here. I did not hear the whole question. Could you just repeat it?
Okay, so the question is, tell us what your youth ministry program is like in your meeting, in your church there?
In my meeting, we don't have a lot of young people, maybe about 5, and the worship is general worship with adults. There isn't anything specific other than the young friends grouping that is from the global, the Jamaica yearly meeting of friends, and so it is more the everybody than the young friends.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Carter. May I ask you, Kumar, what is important in your ministry to youth in your church there?
Can you hear me now? Hi, Dave.
You're ministering to the Bhutanese Quakers there, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Your ministry, can you hear me? Is it mute or unmute? Young ministry, especially, I think, giving more responsibility and priority to the youth.
So you're giving more responsibility to the youth.
Yes.
I think that's a great answer. Yeah. Ernest Cooper, tell us what you're doing with the youth in your church there.
My church,
Yes.
I give you the message of God. I preach the Christian, and I tell them to obey the word from God. Also, I tell them to defend and avoid to do this. Do you understand me?
Yes, go ahead. Do you want to say any more?
I tell them again about the love each other.
Yes. Good. Well, that's very important, and thank you. Desiree, tell us, what are you doing to minister to the young people in your church?
Now, in our church, we make them to have responsibility, engaging in the singing. Are you listening?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the singing, so that way they love and keep coming to church because they love singing and have activities for them.
Can you give us some examples of activities?
Yeah, like activities we could organize like a basketball for young kids, so that way they feel comfortable and then also coming to church and listen to the word of God.
Good. Thank you. And Danae, do you want to say anything about how you're ministering to the youth in your church?
Yes.
before become among the teenagers, they have to be little on the children. So we give them the strong foundation when they are maybe under 10 years to know more about Bible history and to let them know the church and the gospel. After that, when they reach the age of 15, like that, we try to give them a chance to express what they know, to teach or to sing, and to try to be involved in some activities according to what they want to do. I can give you the example. For those who want to translate the preaching, the sermon, when somebody is preaching, give them a chance. Or sometimes we want to practice how to evangelize the neighborhood. We give them a chance to do by themselves. Maybe have one hour to maybe to coach them if needed. Because I think that about youth, there is no tomorrow or there is no future activity at the church because when other people pass away, if we didn't prepare the youth, all the activities we start. That's why we try to give them a chance to be involved in the life of the church and to let them like the word of God in their own way. Thank you.
Thank you. What different nationalities are in your church? You have Rwandans and Congolese, and do you have Kenyans? Tell us who all is in your church.
People from Uganda, Congo, Burundi, and Rwanda. Also, we have American team because the Sunday school teacher has a big family and he has children, so they are also American people.
Wow, you have quite a responsibility, and Kumar has Bhutanese. You don't have anyone from Bhutan in your church, do you? Do you, Danae?
No.
No.
Apart of Africans, we have only one family, one American family.
Yeah, and then Lazarus John is in Sudan right now, and he joins us, so he represents Sudanese. And you don't have any Sudanese in your church right now either, do you?
No, we don't.
Yeah. Okay, this is helpful. Thank you so much. Now I'm wondering what other questions do friends have for Brockie? Can you tell me anything else or any comments you want to make? Bruce, I don't know if you were able to get in fully or not. Bruce Carpenter?
I'll try.
Bruce Carpenter, can you speak to us?
I'm trying, Dave, but I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Sure, I can. And I can see you too. And your brother is watching you. You want to go ahead and do you have anything you want to say? Now's the time to do it because your brother is silent. Bruce, I just unmuted you again. Somehow or other, you keep getting muted.
Okay, well, now let's try it again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Now go ahead.
My question for Brockie is, what have you found to be effective in congregations that realize they need to do something different to connect all the different ages, that the things that they have tried before did not work. What would you suggest from what you've heard and read?
Well, I'm not just trying to butter you up, Bruce, but I actually think Northridge is doing a really good job in this department right now. I was thinking about how I know I read in a bulletin where a group of your ladies are sort of the grandmas decided during this year to have a mom's day out for the younger moms and watch their kids for them. I think that's been incredibly successful. I know that Jody, your children's pastor, has worked on a friend-to-friend connection where the younger kids in the church are matched with older kids and they eat lunch together after church. There's a series of questions for them. I think one of the things is just trying. I think if we aren't trying anything, then I'm not sure that we're being successful. And I often have to learn this too, that it takes several times. Like I can feel like I'm working really hard at something and it doesn't seem like I'm getting any response from this age group. But I find that it takes several attempts and it takes consistency for a period of time for them to respond. And so I guess I would just encourage you, it may not always feel like you're getting anywhere, or maybe you have tried in the past, but just don't give up. And I think it's very important for each church to think about their own context and culture, and not to just rely on a youth pastor, because youth pastors come and go. And if we want people in the church who have a heart for youth and young adults, it has to be people who are going to be there over a long haul and are willing to just be in the trenches with them. So I guess I would just say don't give up, and it just takes time. That's what we're hearing.
Brockie, I think it would be very helpful for you to share some of what you're doing at Haviland Friends Church. I saw a list of people, of youth, children and youth going to camp. It's must have been 50 people, must have been 50 or so. Tell us what you're doing. What is the essence of your success? And then I want to add to that once you say it.
I think that it goes back to that statement, it's a change in church culture. And so I think, like, for example, of camp, like Haviland having 50 people attending, you have to remember that's not just students or kids, it's also adults. And we used to do a camping program where we just relied on college students to come in and be our kids' counselors, but they were people that they would never hardly see again or connect with again. And so now the churches are actually sending people from their local congregations to be the counselors. So, for instance, which I'm going to have to go here soon to get back to my cabin, myself and my co-counselor are both from Haviland. And the reason that we're doing that is so that when we go home, we continue to walk alongside these girls from Haviland after we leave camp. And so that's a change in church culture, not just depending on somebody else to do it, but for us to actually take ownership of the kids who are attending our church.
Add to that, I wanted to add to that at Haviland Friends, when the youth go on a particular project, for example, an inner city project in a major city like Houston, or when they go to camp, or any other project, Vacation Bible School, there is always a report during the worship service and a time of prayer after they return, but not only then, before they go. And then there is often a commissioning for the youth so that the young people can experience the support of the entire congregation, the community, And that's one of the cardinal testimonies of Quakers, community. And the community supporting the youth and the youth workers going off. And for example, how many do you have from having friends at the 4 different camps?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't done a count on that.
But it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60. And then when they come up front, and the children do, sometimes there's 40 or 50 children up front, and then they sing, and that they are a part of the entire church life, worship service, and the entire church life. And I think that is probably as important as any success that any church could have. And I just want to say that as an affirmation of what you're doing and having friends, Brockie. I wonder if there are other questions here. We have 4 minutes before Brockie is going to be the Cinderella to disappear to her children, her youth at camp.
I do want to just say, if there are any questions, because I know time's wrapping up, the presentation that I gave to you this evening, actually a co-worker of mine for Fuller Academy and myself, we are both certified by the Fuller Youth Institute on behalf of the Friends Church. And so if this is something that you would like to have at your church, or you think that your elders or a regional group or anyone would be interested in hearing, please contact us, and we would love to come and see how we could continue this conversation with you. And also just remind you, you can find my email at Barclay and be happy to talk more with you about it. I would love actually to hear from some of you who are pastors, your thoughts on this especially. I've done that a couple times, had some coffee with pastors, and we just talk about it, and they tell me some things they don't like about it, and we talk through that together. So I just wanted to tell you that just because I have to go tonight, that conversation doesn't have to end, but we are a resource available to you if it's something you're interested in hearing more about.
Yes, and if you don't have Brockie's email address, I do, and I can send it to you. So are there any other comments that friends want to make tonight? Well, Brockie, this has really been an enriching experience. I'm sorry for the technical difficulty we've had. And if anybody doesn't have and wants that link, I'll be willing to send that to you too. That's that YouTube link. You heard it, but you didn't see it. This has been an enriching experience. You've involved us in terms of the various cultures that are represented here with your emphasis on that. You've given us some fresh ideas, some practical knowledge, practical ways that we can minister to others. And this is really helpful. We have one more time that we can be with Brockie, and that'll be on July the 1st. And Brockie, you should be back here by then, shouldn't you?
Yeah, I hope so.
Oh, good. Well, great. Well, friends, let's close this in prayer. Oh God, our Creator and our Redeemer, we give you thanks for abiding with us, guiding us in this wonderful experience of learning and growing spiritually. We'll be faithful to share what we've gained for our ministry among our own people toward the building of your kingdom, so that it may be as Jesus prayed, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we, representing various nations on earth, commit ourselves to this and to Christ our Lord, in whose name we give thanks. Amen. Well, you are a beautiful community of friends. That's a worldwide community to whom I'm speaking. Those of us who are local, those who are in the United States, those who are in other nations. We are all one in Christ, and we thank you so much for your participation. We love you all, and we'll see you the first Monday of July, which is July 1. Good night, friends, and we love you.
Thank you.
Oh, hey.
Bye.
I'm gonna-
Good night. Night.